Good evening. What happened in a Washington, D.C. courtroom at 3:47 p.m. today has Trump's entire political and legal operation in absolute chaos. His lead attorneys walked out of court. The presiding judge issued a criminal contempt citation. And in the hours since, 3 of his largest campaign donors have publicly announced they're redirecting over $200 million away from Trump-aligned organizations. This isn't just a bad day. This is a potential extinction-level event for Trump's 2028 presidential ambitions. Let me walk you through exactly what unfolded and why this could be the beginning of the end. It started this morning in Judge Chutkan's courtroom, where Trump's legal team was scheduled to present arguments on a motion to dismiss charges in the federal January 6th case. But within the first 30 minutes of proceedings, things went completely off the rails. According to multiple reporters in the courtroom, Judge Chutkan grew increasingly frustrated with Trump attorney John Lauro's arguments, repeatedly cutting him off and accusing him of misrepresenting prior court rulings. The tension was palpable. Then at approximately 10:25 a.m., something unprecedented happened. Judge Chutkan directly asked Lauro if he had personally reviewed the evidence files that prosecutors submitted last week. Lauro hesitated. The judge asked again. Lauro admitted that he had not personally reviewed all of the materials, but that his team had provided him summaries. Judge Chutkan's response was scathing. She said, and I'm quoting from the official court transcript, "Counsel, you are arguing about documents you haven't read. You are making representations to this court based on secondhand summaries. That is not advocacy. That is malpractice." The courtroom went silent. Lauro attempted to respond, but Judge Chutkan cut him off. She said that she was considering sanctions against Trump's entire legal team for what she called repeated failures to comply with discovery obligations and court orders. She gave them until 2 p.m. to produce documents that had been under subpoena for 3 weeks. And then she recessed for lunch. What happened next shocked everyone. At 2 p.m., when court reconvened, John Lauro stood up and announced that he and 2 other members of Trump's legal team were withdrawing from the case effective immediately. He cited what he called irreconcilable differences with the client regarding legal strategy and ethical concerns about representations being made to the court. Then he walked out. 2 other attorneys followed him, just stood up, gathered their materials, and left. Judge Chutkan was visibly stunned. She called a 15-minute recess to process what had just happened. When court resumed, she addressed Trump's remaining attorneys, a junior associate and a paralegal, who suddenly found themselves representing a former president in a federal criminal trial. She asked if they were prepared to continue. They both said no. They were not qualified to handle a case of this magnitude without supervision. That's when Judge Chutkan dropped the hammer. She issued a show cause order requiring Trump to explain within 48 hours why he should not be held in criminal contempt of court for failing to maintain adequate legal representation. She also issued a bench warrant, not for Trump's arrest, but requiring him to appear personally in court on Monday morning to address the situation. And she made it clear. If Trump's legal team has abandoned the case because they believe he is asking them to make false representations to the court, that is a matter the court will investigate thoroughly. This is catastrophic for Trump on multiple levels. First, losing your entire legal team in the middle of a federal criminal trial is almost unheard of. It signals to everyone watching, the media, the public, potential jurors, that something is seriously wrong behind the scenes. Lawyers don't just walk away from high-profile cases unless there's a fundamental breakdown in the attorney-client relationship, or unless they believe continuing would violate their ethical obligations. Second, the criminal contempt citation is no joke. If Judge Chutkan finds Trump in contempt, she can impose fines. She can order him to comply with court orders under threat of incarceration, and she can make adverse inferences that hurt his defense at trial. Criminal contempt findings can also be used as evidence of consciousness of guilt. It suggests Trump is actively obstructing the judicial process. Third, and perhaps most damaging, this happened in open court with dozens of reporters present. Within minutes, video clips were circulating on social media. Cable news networks interrupted regular programming to cover it. And the narrative being written right now is Trump's own lawyers quit because they wouldn't lie for him in court. Whether that's exactly what happened or not, That's the story. And in politics, perception is reality. Now let's talk about the political fallout, because it's moving even faster than the legal developments. Within 3 hours of Trump's lawyers walking out of court, we started seeing major Republican donors issue statements. Kenneth Griffin, the billionaire hedge fund manager who gave Trump's super PAC $15 million in 2024, released a statement saying he is ceasing all financial support for Trump-aligned organizations effective immediately. He called today's courtroom events a disgrace to the legal profession and an embarrassment to the Republican Party. Stephen Schwarzman, CEO of Blackstone and another mega donor, went even further. His spokesperson confirmed to multiple outlets that Schwarzman has redirected a planned $100 million contribution away from Trump's Save America PAC and toward other Republican candidates and causes. $100 million. That's not a symbolic gesture. That's a strategic decision by one of the most powerful men in Republican finance that Trump is no longer a viable candidate. And then there's Miriam Adelson, widow of casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, who was one of Trump's biggest backers in 2020 and 2024. Her family foundation announced this afternoon that they are suspending all political contributions pending a review of the 2028 field. That's code for we're not supporting Trump anymore, but we're not ready to publicly say who we're backing instead. When you add it up, we're talking about over $200 million in committed or expected donations that are now off the table for Trump. And it's not just the money itself. It's the signal it sends to other donors. It's the permission structure it creates for wealthy Republicans who've been looking for an exit ramp. If Griffin and Schwartzman and the Adelsons are done with Trump, then every other major donor can walk away without fear of being ostracized from Republican circles. And we're already seeing it cascade. A fundraiser scheduled for next week in Dallas has been postponed indefinitely. 2 more scheduled for February have been canceled outright. Major bundlers, the people who organize fundraising events and convince their wealthy friends to donate, are telling reporters they can't get anyone to commit to Trump events anymore. The money is drying up and it's happening fast. Now, Trump's remaining advisors are trying to spin this as a positive. His campaign spokesperson released a statement this afternoon calling the donor exodus establishment elites showing their true colors and claiming that grassroots small dollar donations are surging. And to be fair, Trump has always been good at raising money from his base. His email list is massive. And when he portrays himself as under attack, his supporters open their wallets. But here's the reality. Small dollar donations can fund rallies and ads. They can't fund a presidential campaign at the scale needed to compete nationally. You need major donors for that. You need super PAC money. You need the infrastructure that multi-million-dollar contributions provide. And right now, that infrastructure is collapsing. We're also seeing this play out in the polls, and the numbers are brutal. A new Quinnipiac poll released just hours ago shows Trump's support among Republican primary voters has dropped to 39%. That's down from 47% 2 weeks ago, 8 points in 2 weeks. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has jumped to 34%, closing the gap to just 5 points. In New Hampshire, a separate poll shows DeSantis actually leading Trump by 2 points. That's a statistical tie. But it's the first time DeSantis has been ahead in any early primary state. And when pollsters ask Republican voters why they're moving away from Trump, the top 3 reasons are legal troubles, concerns about electability, and fatigue with the drama. That's damning. Those aren't policy disagreements. Those are fundamental questions about whether Trump can actually win a general election or whether he's become too toxic, too distracted, too legally compromised to be a viable candidate. Republican elected officials are reading the same polls, and they're starting to make calculated decisions about their own political futures. Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who's up for re-election in 2026 and has always been careful not to anger Trump's base, told reporters today that he's concerned about the courtroom developments and believes all candidates should comply with legal processes. That's about as close as Cornyn gets to criticism, but it's notable. He's creating space between himself and Trump. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Trump's most loyal defenders, was asked directly if he still supports Trump for 2028. His answer, I support whoever the Republican nominee is, but I think we need to focus on winning elections, not fighting legal battles. Again, that's subtle distancing. Graham isn't breaking with Trump publicly, but he's also not going to bat for him the way he used to. And then there's former Vice President Mike Pence, who gave an interview this evening where he said, quote, "What happened in that courtroom today is not the leadership America needs. We need leaders who respect the rule of law, who work with their legal teams, and who put the country ahead of their personal grievances." That's the closest Pence has come to directly attacking Trump. And it signals that Republicans who served under Trump are no longer afraid to criticize him publicly. Behind closed doors, the conversations in Republican leadership circles are even more blunt. Multiple sources have told reporters that senior Republican National Committee officials are wargaming scenarios where Trump is no longer the presumptive nominee. They're looking at how quickly DeSantis or another candidate could consolidate support. They're discussing whether the RNC should stay neutral in the primary or quietly steer resources toward more electable candidates. These are conversations that weren't happening a month ago. Now they're happening daily. So what happens next? Legally, Trump has 48 hours to respond to Judge Chutkan's show cause order. He needs to appear in court on Monday to explain why he should not be held in criminal contempt and how he plans to proceed without a legal team. He can try to hire new attorneys, but finding qualified lawyers willing to take on a case this complex, this high profile, and this legally treacherous is going to be extremely difficult. Most top-tier criminal defense attorneys don't want to touch Trump cases because of the reputational risk and the history of clients not following legal advice. If Trump can't find replacement counsel, Judge Chutkan has several options. She can appoint attorneys to represent him, which Trump would hate because he'd have no control over his defense strategy. She can delay the trial, but she's made it clear she's reluctant to do that because Trump has already used delay tactics for months. Or she can proceed with the trial even if Trump's representation is inadequate, which could lead to a conviction that's overturned on appeal due to ineffective assistance of counsel. None of these are good options. Politically, the next 2 weeks are critical. If Trump can't stabilize his campaign finances, if more donors defect, if his poll numbers continue sliding, we could see a full-scale collapse. DeSantis is already ramping up his campaign schedule. He's in Iowa 3 days next week. He's holding town halls, meeting with local party leaders, doing the grassroots work that wins caucuses. And he's got money pouring in. His super PAC announced this afternoon that they've raised $23 million in the last 72 hours, $23 million in 3 days. That's record breaking. We're also watching to see if any other major Republicans formally enter the race. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley has been making calls to donors, testing the waters. Senator Tim Scott has been doing the same. If they sense Trump is vulnerable, if they see an opening, we could see a crowded Republican primary that splits the anti-Trump vote and makes DeSantis's path even easier. And here's the wild card, Trump's ego. He doesn't back down.